Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today into communication styles and specifically zeroing in on assertiveness.
Hmm.
We're working with a chapter from a book on assertiveness training.
Okay.
And get this, one of the things it says is that even babies are like masters of assertiveness.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
We're going to uncover some surprising stuff about how we communicate.
It is fascinating, isn't it, how much our communication style impacts every single area of our life,
Yeah.
Like from how we navigate the workplace to how we build our closest relationships.
Right.
Understanding these styles can really be a game changer.
For sure.
Yeah,
So, okay, let's break this down.
sure.
The book outlines 4 main styles: passive aggressive, and assertive.
Okay.
What really struck me was how relatable the examples were.
Yeah.
Like, for a passive communicator, the book describes like someone who apologizes before even giving their opinion.
Right.
Almost like they're afraid to, take up space.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, the chapter kind of suggests that this behavior often stems from a deep fear of conflict.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe even like a belief that their opinions aren't as valuable as other people's.
Right, right.
So they kind of end up silencing themselves.
Mhm.
And then, of course, that leads to, a buildup of resentment over time.
Yeah, totally, totally. Makes sense. It's like they're constantly dimming their own light to avoid, making any waves.
Yeah.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have, the aggressive style.
Right.
The book paints a pretty vivid picture of someone who, dominates conversations, interrupts constantly, uses a lot of you statements, those really pointed you statements that just shut down any kind of dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
Those are tough.
So what do you think is going on there?
Well, the author argues that this type of communication is often like a mask, right, for
Yeah.
insecurity. So by trying to control the conversation and asserting their dominance, these aggressive communicators are trying to compensate for maybe a lack of confidence or a fear of being vulnerable.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah,
So it's not necessarily about being intentionally mean.
right.
It's more about a kind of a deep-rooted need to protect themselves.
Exactly, yeah. And as you can imagine, this type of communication can lead to some pretty strained relationships. The chapter highlights how aggressive communication kind of creates this cycle
Yeah.
of conflict, defensiveness, and then resentment,
Uh-huh.
which ultimately undermines trust and intimacy.
Right, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about passive and aggressive. Now let's move on to the kind of sneakier one, passive aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
This is where things get a little tricky.
Yeah, indeed.
What do you think?
The book describes passive-aggressive communication as almost like a blend, right, of the first two styles.
Okay.
It's like someone who appears very passive on the surface,
Right.
but then they use these really subtle digs
Oh, yeah.
or sarcasm or even like sabotage to express their displeasure.
Right.
So, they might agree to do something, but then, quote unquote, forget to do it or, do it very poorly,
Right.
purposely.
It's almost like they're saying, fine, I'll do it, but with a tone that just screams, but I'm going to make you regret asking.
Yeah.
Right. It's that like undercurrent of resentment that makes it so hard to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. The chapter, it suggests that passive-aggressive behavior often stems from, a difficulty expressing anger directly.
Uh-huh. Interesting.
They might fear confrontation.
Yeah.
Or believe that expressing their anger openly would lead to rejection or punishment. So they resort to these, indirect ways of getting their message across.
Which, as the book points out, can be so damaging to relationships. It just creates this atmosphere of distrust and tension because you never really know where you stand with them.
It's like walking on eggshells.
Yes, exactly.
You're never quite sure what's going to set them off.
Right.
And because that anger is never really directly addressed, it just kind of festers and grows, leading to even more passive-aggressive behavior.
Okay, so we've covered the 3 non-assertive styles.
We have.
Now let's get to the star of the show, assertiveness.
Yes.
I love how the book describes it as like the sweet spot
Uh-huh.
of communication, right?
Right.
Where you can express your needs and your opinions clearly and directly,
Yep.
but still respecting the other person's perspective.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance
Right.
between honoring your own needs
Yeah.
and acknowledging the needs of others. It's not about being a doormat or a bulldozer. It's about finding that way to communicate authentically.
Right.
Without resorting to manipulation or aggression.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that really stood out to me was the emphasis on I statements. The book suggests that assertive communicators use I statements to express their feelings and needs without blaming or accusing the other person.
Right.
So instead of saying, "You always interrupt me," it's more like, "I feel frustrated when I'm interrupted because it makes it difficult for me to share my thoughts."
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think the I statement is such a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Because it shifts the focus, right? From the other person's behavior to your own experience.
Right, right.
It allows you to express how you feel without putting that other person on the defensive.
Yeah.
Which opens the door for a much more constructive dialogue.
Right, totally. It's like you're taking ownership of your emotions
Right.
instead of, throwing them at the other person.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, the book also tackles some common myths about assertiveness.
Okay.
For instance, is being assertive just another way of being aggressive?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And the book addresses this, head on.
Okay.
It emphasizes that assertiveness and aggressiveness are not the same.
Oh.
While both of them involve, expressing your needs, expressing your opinions, the key difference lies in the intention and the approach. Aggressiveness is about dominating and controlling others.
Right.
Whereas assertiveness is about respecting both yourself and the other person.
So it's not about getting your way all the time. It's more about being able to communicate effectively and set healthy boundaries.
Exactly, yeah. And another myth that the book debunks is that assertive people always get what they want. And that's not true. Assertiveness is not a magic formula for getting everything that you desire.
Right.
It's about expressing yourself clearly.
Okay.
Advocating for what you need, and then respecting the outcome.
Right.
Even if it's not in your favor.
That's a really important point. So it's more about having the courage to speak up.
Yes.
Even if you don't get the answer you were hoping for.
Exactly. It's about valuing your own voice.
Yeah.
Valuing what you need, even if you're facing potential disappointment or conflict.
Okay. So we've busted a couple of myths about assertiveness.
We have.
Now let's talk about the good stuff, the benefits.
Yes.
The book highlights a ton of advantages from reduced anxiety, stronger relationships, to like a greater sense of self-worth and even, better physical health.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's a lot. Yeah.
How assertiveness can have such a ripple effect.
Right.
Across all areas of our lives.
Yeah, yeah.
When we're communicating assertively, we're essentially telling ourselves and the world that our needs and our feelings matter.
Right.
And that can lead to a huge shift in how we see ourselves.
Right.
And our relationships with others.
So it's not just about getting our point across. It's about how we view ourselves and how we allow others to treat us.
Absolutely. When we learn to assert ourselves effectively, we are reclaiming our power and setting the stage for, healthier, more fulfilling relationships.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's this one section that really piqued my curiosity.
Okay.
The book claims that everyone is born assertive. And it uses the example of a crying baby.
Right.
I mean, babies are definitely not shy about letting their needs be known.
Oh, that's a great point.
Right.
That's exactly the point I think the author is trying to make, right?
Yeah.
Babies are naturally assertive. They're expressing their needs. They cry when they're hungry. They cry when they're tired, when they're uncomfortable.
Right.
They don't hesitate to let everyone know what they want.
Yeah.
And it's only as we grow older that we start to learn to suppress that natural assertiveness, often in response to, societal pressures or family dynamics.
It's like we're all born with this innate ability to communicate our needs.
Yeah.
But then somewhere along the way, we learn to silence ourselves.
It's so true.
So what causes us to lose touch with that natural assertiveness, do you think?
Well, the chapter, delves into how our upbringing, cultural norms, and societal expectations can really influence our communication styles.
Right.
If a child is repeatedly told to be quiet or that their opinions don't matter,
Right.
they might start to believe that expressing themselves is wrong or even dangerous.
Right, like we internalize those messages
Yeah.
and we start to doubt the validity of our own voices. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily that we lose our assertiveness. It's more like it gets buried under layers of conditioning.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the great news is that we can unlearn those, unhelpful patterns.
Okay.
And we can reclaim our natural assertiveness.
That's great.
It takes conscious effort, takes practice.
Yeah.
But it's definitely possible to reconnect with that inner voice and start communicating in a way that feels authentic and empowering.
So we're not stuck
We're not stuck.
with the communication styles we developed in childhood.
Right.
We can actually rewire ourselves
Yes.
to communicate more effectively.
Yeah.
Okay. That's encouraging. So if we're all born assertive, what holds us back from communicating authentically as adults? What are some of the factors that prevent us from expressing ourselves fully?
Well, the chapter, it highlights several factors,
Okay.
starting with, limiting beliefs.
Uh-huh.
These are those negative thoughts that we have about ourselves that prevent us from, taking risks
Right.
or expressing ourselves authentically.
Okay. Yeah.
For example, you might have this belief that if I speak up, people won't like me,
Right.
or that it's selfish to assert my needs.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Those are some pretty heavy beliefs to carry around.
Yeah, they are.
It's like they create an invisible cage
Yeah.
that prevents us from stepping into our full potential.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And these beliefs, they often stem from past experiences, maybe where we were punished or ridiculed for expressing ourselves. So we learn to associate assertiveness with negative consequences.
Right.
And we start to avoid it altogether.
So it's not that we're like inherently incapable of being assertive.
Right.
It's more like we've developed these mental roadblocks that prevent us from accessing that part of ourselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the book, it provides some really helpful strategies for overcoming these limiting beliefs.
Right. Yeah.
Which we can delve into a little bit later.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like this chapter's packed with valuable insights. Now, what about the skills themselves? Is it just a matter of mindset, or are there actual techniques that we need to learn to become more assertive?
That's a great question. The chapter, acknowledges that while mindset is critical, having the right skills is equally important. It's like having all the ingredients for a delicious cake, but not knowing how to bake it.
Right.
You need the right tools and techniques to bring it all together.
So it's not enough to just want to be assertive.
Right.
You actually need to learn how to express your needs clearly, set boundaries, and navigate those like tricky conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where assertiveness training can be incredibly valuable.
Okay.
It gives you a safe space to learn to practice these skills.
Right.
So you can start communicating in a way that feels authentic and empowering.
That makes sense. It's like any other skill, right?
It is.
You need to learn the fundamentals and practice consistently to become proficient. Now, what about social cues? How do we know when to be assertive and when to hold back? Is it just about, going with our gut?
Right.
Or is there more to it than that?
Well, the chapter, it introduces this concept of social calibration,
Okay.
which is the ability to read those social keys and then adjust your communication style accordingly. So it's not about being assertive all the time,
Right.
but rather knowing when to be assertive, when to be a little bit more flexible,
Right.
and when to simply walk away from a situation that's not serving you.
So it's about being mindful of the context and the people you're interacting with.
Yeah.
Right? Like you might be very assertive with a coworker who's, constantly interrupting you, but you might choose to be more diplomatic with, let's say, your boss or a client.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about finding the right balance,
Right.
adapting your approach based on that specific situation. And that's where self-awareness comes in, right?
Yeah.
The more you understand your own communication style and the impact it has on others, the better equipped you'll be to make those conscious choices about how you communicate.
So it's not just about learning a set of skills, it's about developing that inner compass.
Right.
Yeah.
That guides you toward healthy and effective communication.
Beautifully put.
Right.
And let's not forget the role of cultural factors here.
Yeah, yeah.
The chapter highlights how different cultures have different norms,
Right.
different expectations around communication,
Uh-huh.
which can influence how we express ourselves.
Right. Like in some cultures, direct communication might be seen as, rude
Yeah.
or confrontational,
Right.
while in others, it's valued for its honesty and efficiency.
Right.
So it's important to be aware of those nuances
Uh-huh.
and adjust our communication style accordingly.
It's not about abandoning our own cultural values,
Man.
but finding a way to bridge that gap.
Uh-huh.
Communicate effectively with people from different backgrounds.
Right, right.
It's about expanding our communication toolkit,
Yeah.
being adaptable
Yeah.
to different situations and contexts. Right, yeah, that makes sense. Now, let's dive into a really important concept from the book, assertive rights.
Okay.
The chapter outlines like these fundamental rights that everyone has, regardless of their background, their personality, or their social status.
Uh-huh.
And understanding these rights is crucial for developing a healthy sense of self-worth
Yeah.
and advocating for our needs.
These rights are like the bedrock, right,
Good.
for healthy communication.
Uh-huh.
They give us a framework for understanding, what we can expect from ourselves and from others in our interactions.
Okay, so what are some of these assertive rights? I mean, the book lists quite a few,
It does.
but what are some of the key ones that really stood out to you?
Well, first and foremost, you have the right to express your needs,
Uh-huh.
your ideas, your opinions.
Okay.
This means you don't have to apologize for having an opinion
Right.
or for wanting something different
Right.
from what other people want.
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and you have the right to have your perspective considered.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a powerful one.
it is.
It's like giving yourself permission to take up space
Yeah.
and share your unique perspective without fear of judgment.
Exactly. And you also have the right to make decisions
Mm-hmm.
that are in your best interest,
Right.
even if those decisions aren't popular
Uh-huh.
with everybody else.
Yeah, it's about taking ownership of your life,
Right.
making choices that align with your values and your goals.
Yes, and another important right is the right to say no
Uh-huh.
without feeling guilty
Yeah.
or obligated to explain yourself.
Right.
You don't have to agree to every request or demand
Right.
that's placed upon you.
Yeah.
You have the right to set boundaries,
Mhm.
protect your time and energy.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that your needs are just as important
Exactly.
as anyone else's. And it's not about being selfish, it's about, practicing self-care
Right.
and setting healthy limits.
Absolutely. And you also have the right to change your mind.
Oh, yeah.
You're not obligated to stick to a decision
Right.
just because you made it in the past.
Yeah.
People grow, they evolve.
Yeah.
Their needs and desires change over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about being flexible and adaptable
Right.
and not feeling trapped by past decisions.
Exactly. And another important right is the right to make mistakes.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Nobody's perfect.
No.
We all mess up from time to time.
Yeah, we do.
It's about accepting that mistakes are a part of the learning process
Yeah.
and not letting the fear of failure,
Right.
hold us back from taking risks
Yeah.
and pursuing our goals.
Totally. Yeah.
And finally, you have the right to be treated with respect,
Yes.
regardless of your opinions, your beliefs, or your background.
Mm,
This is a fundamental human right,
right.
and it's essential for creating, healthy and fulfilling relationships.
So as you can see, these assertive rights encompass such a wide range of aspects of our lives, from
Yeah.
our personal relationships
Oh.
to our professional interaction.
Absolutely. And, understanding these rights can be so empowering
Right.
because it gives you a framework
Uh-huh.
for navigating difficult situations
Right.
and advocating for your needs in a healthy and constructive way.
Right.
It's about recognizing that you have a voice
Yeah.
and that your needs matter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a roadmap for creating healthier boundaries
It is.
and building more fulfilling relationships.
And it's about reclaiming your power
Yeah.
and living a life that's more aligned with your authentic self.
That's
Mhm.
powerful. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into assertiveness,
Ah,
from the different communication styles to the benefits of assertiveness and this concept of assertive rights.
uh-huh.
We've really laid the foundation for understanding this powerful communication approach. But we're just getting started.
Yes, we are.
We'll be back in a moment to continue our exploration.
Looking forward to it.
So don't go anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, it really is incredible how these like seemingly simple concepts can have such a huge impact on our
Yeah,
well-being and,
yeah.
and the quality of our relationship.
Right, right. It really feels like understanding and embracing assertiveness can be like a key to unlocking greater confidence and living more authentically, you know.
I completely agree.
Mm.
And building on that idea of unlocking potential,
Mhm.
I'd love to circle back to that fascinating point from the book about how we're all born assertive.
Yes, it's almost like assertiveness is like our natural state. And then, life throws us some curveballs that
Yeah.
cause us to deviate from that path,
That's a great way to put it. The chapter kind of suggests that our early experiences, particularly within our families,
Mhm.
play a crucial role in shaping our communication styles.
So if we're all born assertive, what happens along the way?
Right.
What leads some of us to become more passive or aggressive in our communication, as we grow up?
Well, the book dives into how our caregivers' communication patterns
Okay.
can really significantly impact our development.
Uh,
For instance, if a child grows up in a household where conflict is just avoided at all costs,
right.
they might learn to suppress their own needs and opinions
Right.
just to maintain a sense of harmony.
It's like they learn that expressing themselves openly could lead to negative consequences. So they adapt by developing a more passive communication style, kind of as a coping mechanism.
Exactly. And on the flip side, if a child grows up, witnessing their parents constantly arguing
Right.
or engaging in aggressive behavior,
Yeah.
they might learn that aggression is the only way to get their needs met.
So it's not just about the explicit lessons that our parents teach us,
Right.
but also about the unspoken messages that we absorb from observing their interactions
Yeah.
with each other and with the world around them.
Precisely. We're like sponges, constantly absorbing information from our environment.
Right.
And those early experiences, they really form the foundation for our own communication patterns as we mature.
Hmm. The book also points out that these learned behaviors can become so ingrained that we might not even be aware of them.
Yeah. It's fascinating how they can become part of our subconscious programming,
Right.
influencing how we react in different situations
Uh-huh.
without us even realizing it.
So it's not that we're like consciously choosing to be passive or aggressive, but rather that we're operating on autopilot
Yeah.
based on these like deeply ingrained patterns from our past.
That's a very insightful observation.
Right.
And this really highlights why self-awareness is so crucial
Uh-huh.
for breaking free from these unhelpful patterns.
Yeah.
Once we become aware how our past experiences are influencing our present behavior,
Right.
we can start to make conscious choices
Yeah.
about how we want to communicate.
So it's not about, blaming our parents or
Yeah.
dwelling on the past, but rather about understanding how those experiences have shaped us and then taking responsibility for our own growth and evolution.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that while our past experiences may have influenced our communication patterns,
Right.
we have the power to change
Yeah.
and create new, healthier patterns.
Yeah, that's incredibly empowering to realize, that we're not stuck with the
Yeah.
communication styles we developed in childhood.
We are-
We can actually rewire ourselves to communicate more effectively.
Absolutely. The book, it provides some helpful tips for overcoming those limiting beliefs
Okay.
and developing a more assertive communication style.
Yeah.
Would you like to explore some of those?
Definitely. What are some of the strategies that the book suggests for challenging those negative thoughts, those limiting beliefs
Yeah.
that hold us back from expressing ourselves authentically?
Well, one of the key strategies is to directly challenge
Mhm.
those negative thoughts, right?
Mhm.
So, for example, if you catch yourself thinking, if I speak up, people won't like me.
Right. Right.
The book suggests asking yourself, is that really true? Like,
Uh-huh.
is there any evidence to support that belief?
So it's about, questioning those assumptions and
Mhm.
replacing them with more positive and empowering beliefs
Right.
that support our growth.
Exactly. And another helpful tip the book offers is to start small.
Yep.
You don't have to transform
Right.
from completely passive to like assertively expressive
Mm.
overnight.
Right, right.
It's about taking baby steps
Yeah.
and gradually building our confidence and our comfort level with assertiveness.
Right.
So the book suggests, practicing assertiveness in low stakes situations first,
Okay.
like ordering food at a restaurant or asking a store clerk for help.
Right.
It's about building that assertiveness muscle gradually.
I like that. That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we become more comfortable asserting ourselves in those smaller interactions, we'll start to feel more confident tackling, bigger challenges.
Absolutely. And speaking of tackling challenges, the book also it emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries,
Yeah.
particularly for individuals who tend to be more passive
Okay.
and struggle with saying no.
Right. Boundaries are crucial for protecting our time, our energy, and our emotional well-being, right?
Yeah.
They help us define what's acceptable and unacceptable in our relationships, both personal and professional.
In the book, it provides some practical guidance for setting boundaries,
Right.
like being clear and direct in our communication,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
using I statements
Hmm.
to express our needs,
Right.
and avoiding apologies or justifications
Yeah.
when we're stating our limits.
So it's about clearly and firmly stating our needs
Yes.
without being aggressive or disrespectful.
Uh-huh.
It's about standing our ground
Right.
while still respecting the other person.
Exactly. And another critical aspect of setting boundaries is being consistent.
Uh-huh.
If we cave in
Yeah.
once people are more likely to test those boundaries again in the future.
That makes sense. It's like having a fence with holes in it.
Yeah.
It won't be effective in keeping things out.
Precisely.
Right.
Strong boundaries require consistency
Yeah.
and firmness.
Okay.
Um,
Now, the book also suggests practicing assertiveness techniques like role playing or
Yes.
visualization.
mhm.
Would you be interested in exploring these a bit further?
Absolutely. I'm always intrigued by tools that can help us kind of bridge the gap
Yeah.
between understanding a concept and actually implementing it.
Well, role playing can be incredibly helpful
Hmm.
for getting comfortable with different scenarios and practicing responding assertively in
Yeah.
a safe and supportive environment.
Okay.
You can even role play with a friend or a therapist
Right.
to get feedback and kind of refine your approach.
That sounds like a great way to build confidence.
Yeah.
And get real-time feedback
Yeah.
on how our assertiveness, comes across. Exactly. And visualization can be equally powerful.
Okay.
It involves mentally rehearsing how you want to handle a particular situation.
Right.
Almost like creating a mental script that you can refer to
Okay.
when you're faced with a challenging interaction.
It's like mentally preparing for a big game or a presentation. By visualizing success, we can boost our confidence and reduce anxiety.
Precisely. And speaking of reducing anxiety, the book also highlights the importance of self-care in developing and maintaining assertiveness.
That's an interesting connection. How does self-care tie into assertiveness?
Well, assertiveness is not just about, advocating for ourselves.
Right.
It's also about recognizing that we deserve to be treated with respect
Uh-huh.
and that our needs and well-being matter.
So it's about making choices that nourish our mind, our body, and our spirit, right?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that taking care of ourselves is not selfish, but rather an act of self-respect.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
self-care can look different for everyone.
Right.
For some, it might involve, getting enough sleep, eating nutritious food,
Yeah.
and exercising regularly.
Yeah.
For others, it might involve spending time in nature, pursuing creative hobbies,
Right.
or connecting with loved ones.
Yeah, yeah.
It's about finding what replenishes and re-energizes you.
And by prioritizing self-care, we create like a solid foundation
Uh-huh.
from which we can express ourselves more assertively.
Right.
We feel more centered and empowered to advocate for our needs.
Exactly. It's not just about, learning a set of skills.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a mindset of self-respect and self-compassion,
Yeah.
which empowers us to show up as our most authentic and empowered selves.
This has been such an insightful exploration of the factors that can influence our communication styles and the tools that we can use to develop greater assertiveness. I'm eager to delve into some specific strategies from the book for putting these concepts into action.
Okay.
Welcome back. So we've been unpacking all these really powerful ideas about assertiveness, and now I'm really curious to see how we can actually put these concepts into practice,
Well, you're in luck because the last part of this chapter actually offers some practical guidance for integrating assertive communication into our everyday lives.
Okay.
It acknowledges that understanding the theory is one thing, but actually applying it in real life situations can be a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. So where do we even begin? How do we take all this knowledge about assertiveness and actually make it work for us in our interactions with others?
Well, the chapter emphasizes that the first step is awareness. It suggests paying close attention to our current communication patterns and identifying those moments where we might be holding back or maybe even overstepping boundaries. It's like taking an honest inventory of our communication habits.
So we need to become aware of those automatic responses, those ingrained ways of communicating that we might not even realize we're doing.
Right.
And maybe even uncover the underlying beliefs that are driving those patterns.
Exactly. Once we have that awareness, we can start to challenge those limiting beliefs and experiment with new ways of communicating.
Okay.
The book provides some really useful tools for doing just that.
Okay.
Like using I statements, setting clear boundaries and practicing active listening.
Okay, let's break those down, one by one. We've touched on I statements before, but can you remind us why are they so powerful?
Yeah, so statements are a way to express our needs and feelings without placing blame or judgment on the other person.
Okay.
So for instance, instead of saying you're always late,
right,
which can come across as accusatory, we could say, I feel frustrated when I'm kept waiting because it makes me feel like my time isn't respected.
So it's about shifting the focus from their behavior to our own experience.
Exactly.
It's about owning our feelings instead of, projecting them onto the other person.
Precisely. It allows us to communicate our perspective without putting the other person on the defensive.
Right.
Which opens up the possibility for a more constructive dialogue.
Right. Totally. Now, what about setting boundaries?
Okay.
We've talked about their importance, but how do we actually go about setting them effectively?
Well, the book, it stresses that setting boundaries is about communicating what's acceptable and what's unacceptable to us in a clear and assertive way.
Right.
It's about honoring our own needs and limits.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be confrontational.
Right.
It suggests using a calm and respectful tone when setting boundaries, even when the other person doesn't, initially respond positively.
That makes sense. It's not about creating a wall between us and others. It's about creating a safe and healthy space for ourselves within our relationships.
Exactly. And sometimes setting boundaries might involve saying no to requests or demands on our time or energy.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Right.
We have the right to prioritize our well-being.
Okay. So we've covered I statements and boundary setting.
Yes.
What about active listening?
Okay.
How does that tie into assertive communication?
Well, active listening is a crucial element of assertive communication because it demonstrates that we're genuinely interested in understanding the other person's perspective. Even if we don't agree with them.
Right.
We can still make an effort to hear them out.
Yeah.
And acknowledge their point of view.
So it's not just about getting our point across.
Right.
It's about creating a space for genuine dialogue and understanding.
Yeah.
It's about honoring the other person's right to be heard, just as we want our own voice to be respected.
Exactly. And the chapter also emphasizes the importance of self-care as a foundation for assertive communication.
That's an interesting connection. I can see how how prioritizing our well-being would give us, more energy and confidence
Yeah.
to advocate for ourselves.
Absolutely. Assertiveness is not about, relentlessly pushing our needs at the expense of others.
Right.
It's about finding that healthy balance
Uh-huh.
between advocating for ourselves
Yeah.
and respecting the needs of those around us.
Yeah.
And that balance often requires setting boundaries
Uh-huh.
and making choices that prioritize our well-being.
It's about recognizing that taking care of ourselves is not selfish.
Right.
It's essential for showing up as our best selves
Yeah.
in all areas of our lives.
And the book offers some practical self-care strategies,
Right.
like making sure we're getting enough sleep,
Uh-huh.
eating nourishing food,
Yeah.
incorporating movement into our day,
Okay.
and pursuing activities that bring us joy.
So it's about being intentional about creating a lifestyle that supports
Yeah.
our physical, our emotional, and our mental well-being.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about making time for ourselves,
Right.
and replenishing our energy,
Yeah.
so that we can engage with the world from a place of strength,
Right.
and clarity.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening. We've explored the spectrum of communication styles.
Mhm.
We've debunked some common myths about assertiveness.
Yeah.
We uncovered the benefits of embracing this approach.
Right.
And we learned some practical tools
Yes.
for becoming more assertive communicators.
It's amazing how much we've unpacked from just one chapter.
I know, right?
And I think the key takeaway here is that assertiveness is an ongoing journey.
Yeah.
It's not a destination.
Right.
It's about continuously learning, growing,
Mhm.
and finding our unique voice in the world.
And as we wrap up this episode, I think it's worth reflecting on that really powerful idea we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
The idea that we're all born assertive.
Right.
If that's true,
Right.
what experiences or messages along the way
Yeah.
might have caused us to stray from
Yeah.
that natural assertiveness. And we encourage you to consider how you can reclaim that innate ability
Right.
to communicate authentically and create more fulfilling relationships.
Great point.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.